Hello, I'm Grecia de Jesus and I'm a healthcare psychologist in the Sanitas Health Promotion Service. Welcome to today's workshop, in which we are going to talk about stress in exceptional situations. The workshop will last approximately 25 to 30 minutes. While the workshop is taking place, you can leave any question you may have by clicking on the question mark icon at the top of the screen. At the end of the workshop, we'll devote a few minutes to answering some of them. First of all, we are going to talk about what stress is. Then we'll carry on by explaining the pressure performance curve, and we'll end with two practical exercises. One on relaxation and another on resilience. Let's start. What is stress? Stress is our body's natural response to situations which are very demanding or which we perceive as threatening. These demands can be internal, that is, demands we impose upon ourselves, and can also be external, that is, demands that come from outside. For example, from other people, like our boss perhaps. Stress is also a response that is necessary for survival and appears when we perceive that we do not have enough resources for us to deal with problems. Our body adapts to these demands or threatening situations by mobilizing all the resources available to it, both physiological resources and psychological resources. For example, under stress, we feel much more physically active because we react faster, we are much more effective and more creative, and also we look for solutions far more efficiently, and so on. Therefore, stress gives rise to benefits such as enabling us to achieve goals we would not achieve if we were totally calm and stress was absent. On the other hand, we have to ask ourselves the following question: when does stress become a problem? The answer is found in the elements of time and intensity. Let me explain. When stress reaches too high a level, or when we remain stressed for a long while, we become negatively impacted because all those resources we used to have begin to run out. This creates a stress overload that has a knock-on effect on our body and gives rise to illnesses and pathological abnormalities that prevents our body from developing and working normally. I'll give an example of how it works in the animal world, as it helps us to understand the concept and can be generalized in relation to humans in the situations we are threatening for us. Imagine this scene. If a zebra sees a lion, what is going to happen? Its brain will interpret almost automatically that it is in danger. Emotional states such as fear and stress will emerge, and thanks to these reactions, it will make to flee as quickly as possible from the lion and to survive. If the same zebra, upon seeing the lion, does not interpret the situation as being threatening and instead it takes it calmly, the lion will catch it and it will die. At the other extreme, if the zebra sees not just the lion but a complete pride of lions, or if the zebra comes upon the menace of the lion day after day, the stress will trigger serious consequences. At this point, it is important to highlight that it's not always the situations themselves that cause us stress, but the way we interpret them. There is something called irrational thoughts, which lead us to interpret that there is a threat when there is none. One example of irrational thinking could be what's known as catastrophizing, meaning seeing situations from a catastrophic perspective. For example, if your son is a few minutes late coming home after meeting up with friends, thinking he's had an accident and something serious has happened to him. This kind of thought is catastrophizing because we do not have evidence for that. So it is a be-aside thinking. Do you have this kind of thoughts? Now you know that they are irrational, so remember to question them by evidence when they appear. It's important to bear in mind as well as stress and anxiety are not the same thing. As we have seen, the cause of stress is the actual presence of a stressful factor. By contrast, with anxiety, that body response remains when the stress-producing stimulus has already disappeared. It is an emotional response of apprehension, of trepidation, of unease, which occurs, as we said earlier, without there being a clear stimulus. In conclusion, there are three important facts. 1. Stress is a natural response of our body and is used by to survive. 2. It enables us to adapt to the changes happening around us. And 3. It gives rise to a general activation of our organism. In this second slide, we can see a graph which shows the relationship between productivity and stress level. As we were discussing earlier, in this graph we can clearly see that an optimum level of stress is adaptive and functional, so that it enables us to achieve the maximum level of productivity. This type of stress is known as eustress and is a stimulant for living in a state of well-being. If we are too calm or serene, we do not achieve our desired level of productivity. However, if we are too tired or overwhelmed due to an excessive level of stress, we don't achieve the desired productivity level either, because we have exhausted our resources. This type of stress is known as distress and denotes a state that is disagreeable, harmful, and tiring. We cannot ignore stress or simply tolerate it. Stress forms part of our daily lives. The situations with stress very often are not going to disappear. And the advisable thing would be to learn to identify stress and beat it or reduce it to more tolerable levels. It is very important for us to be capable of analyzing and perceiving when we are stressed, in order to be able to stop before we reach a point where it is too intense, and in this way prevent it from wearing us out. The ideal thing would be to allow ourselves breaks of between 5 and 10 minutes every hour during our day with any task we set ourselves. And it is also important to ask ourselves self-analysis questions like, how do I feel my body right now? Am I affected by something that just happened? Am I enjoying about the activity that I am doing right now? Is there something that worries me? These kinds of questions make us feel in contact to ourselves and therefore react if we need to change something to feel better. To end this slide, we are going to mention the appropriate steps for managing stress. First, identify the level of stress we are experiencing as well as its causes. Second, stop and be aware of how important is our health and prioritizing ourselves is. Third, do some kind of relaxation technique. Diaphragmatic breathing, body scan, progressive relaxation of the muscles, mindfulness, and lastly, put things into perspective and look for the solutions which adapt best to the situation. Now, in this new slide, we are going to learn a technique called diaphragmatic breathing, which serves to regulate our emotions. Why is this technique advisable? One of the most frequent symptoms is the feeling of being short of breath. The fact is that we are telling our body that we are in a threatening situation, and therefore our body gets ready to run or fight by getting a lot of oxygen. What happens here is that we are not going to run or fight, because the problems we face nowadays don't involve that level of danger. So the oxygen accumulates in our body, giving us the feeling that we are short of breath, when really it's the opposite. Diaphragmatic breathing will help us to regulate the amount of oxygen we are breathing in. When performing diaphragmatic breathing, we move our abdomen and all that it contains. This stimulates our vagus nerve, which is responsible for activating our parasympathetic autonomic nervous system. Let's go. Let's do this exercise. When you do diaphragmatic breathing, you mustn't force your breathing. Remember this, let it flow, there's no pressure, otherwise you can make yourself dizzy. If you do become dizzy, go back to your own usually breathe. One tip, breathing techniques and relaxation techniques in generally should be used as soon as we notice we are becoming tense. If we wait a long while and the tension reaches a peak, they will be a lot less effective. It's easier to lower stress when it is still low than when it is at its highest point. So, step 1. Lie facing upwards on a flat surface or on your bed with your knees bent and with your head support, provided this does not create cervical tension. You can use a pillow under your knees to support your legs, and you can also do this exercise while sit. Place one hand on the upper part of your chest and the other simply below your rib cage, like this. This will enable you to feel your diaphragmatic move as you breathe. Step 2. Breathe in slowly through your nose for 3 seconds approximately, making your stomach rise. The hand on your chest should remain as still as possible. Hold your breath for 3 or 4 seconds. And step 3, breathe out through your mouth which will make your stomach go back down. We do this outward breath over a period of 6 seconds with your lips lightly touching as if we were blowing gently, audible outward breaths. The hand on your chest should remain as still as possible. Repeat the cycle again. Let's do it together. Breathe in through your nose for 3 seconds, taking the air right down to your stomach. Hold for 3 seconds and then audible breathe out through your mouth for 6 seconds. Let's do another one. How did it go? How did you feel? It is important to reflect on how was your own experience, because it is going to be different depending on the person. We have to understand that maybe for the first time we didn't have a lot of benefits, so it is essential to practice this exercise frequently. I specifically recommend doing 40 breaths each day by way of practice. This practice will help you to feel that you have tools to manage your emotions, helping you also feeling comfortable with your emotions even if they are not pleasant. We have already arrived to the last slide, where we are going to talk about resilience. Maybe you have already heard about this concept, so let's deepen in it. We can define resilience as the ability to face adversity in life. Resilience is universal. That is, we all have this strength, but it is more developed in some people than in others. The main difference is in practicing. It is important to have an open attitude in order to learn from adversity and thus develop our resilience. Training our resilience will enable us to find it easier to leave our comfort zones and therefore also have more options so we can successfully face any changes that may come along. When facing any threats, there are always one or more opportunities, but we have to open our minds to find them. I always recommend performing a SWOT analysis when we find ourselves facing a difficult situation and listing the weaknesses and strengths we have as people to highlight the great value of our strengths and improve on our weaknesses. And at the same time, identify the threats and opportunities in the situations we are experiencing. This is an exercise about insight that helps us to put things into perspective and seek solutions. Having a developed resilience also helps us to reach our objectives, because if we do not collapse and we remain hopeful, open, and optimistic, we will proactively mobilize towards change and towards the search for new solutions. Do you want to know if you have a developed resilience? Then you need to realize and analyze about personal factors like self-esteem, empathy, autonomy, humor, and creativity. You can ask yourself questions like, am I interested in the activities that I do in my daily life? Or, Does my life make sense for me? Am I resolute and determined? Am I proud of the things that I have achieved? These 5 factors, self-esteem, empathy, autonomy, humor, and creativity, are closely related with the resilience. To expand these factors, it's important to allow you to have free time in your daily life for yourself. Can you afford it? We have now reached to the end of the workshop. Remember, stress is a state that gives you a lot of information, and its appearance is an opportunity to learn self-regulation techniques. It is also very important to develop strengths like the resilience to prevent the stress. I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting. Next, we are going to answer some of the questions you've led us as the workshop was happening. The first question says, what does burnout syndrome mean? Okay, burnout or burnout syndrome refers to a state of exhaustion that is both physical and emotional, which is linked to the working environment. It's associated with high stress levels, feelings overworked, and limited involvement in a decision making. At a psychological level, the consequences tend to be depression and anxiety. So it is important to start a psychological treatment as soon as possible to avoid these mentioned consequences. The next question asks, how can I handle stress in my job when they send me several tasks at the same time that I'm aware I won't be able to do? Okay, so first of all, you need to take into account the key strategy at the organization. To do this, you should take a few moments to organize all the work that is pending, creating a list of priority tasks and classifying them by difficulty and the time involved in performing them. If even after having done this, you estimate it will be impossible to complete all the tasks, then it's the time to start using your assertiveness skills and ask a colleague or your superior for help, or know how to set limits and say no. Someone else has asked, what is post-traumatic stress? Post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental disorder which occurs when you've been exposed to a traumatic situation, either because you experienced it or because you witnessed it. The symptoms can include flashbacks, nightmares, intrusive memories, and intense emotional distress. We are going to answer one final question. What relaxation techniques are there? The most recommended and well-known one is diaphragmatic breathing, which we learned during the workshop's practical section. There are also other techniques such as body scanning, Jacobson progressive muscle relaxation technique, and mindfulness. These techniques helps us understand our emotions and regulate them with avoiding them. We have come to the end. After the workshop, you will receive a satisfaction survey. Please take a few minutes to fill it out. Your opinion is important to us and helps us to improve. Thank you very much for your attention and participation. If you would like more information or to discuss other topics with me, you can make an appointment in the Psychology Health program on the Sanitas app. Don't forget, you can also make an appointment via video consultation. You can also make an appointment for other specialties in the health promotion service, such as nutrition, exercise, maternity, and child health. Have a good day. Thank you very much.